take a seat. I think we'll get started here. Looks like a small group this morning. Good morning, everybody. Today we'll be discussing Redwood County Ditch 14. It starts in New Haven Township, includes part of Redwood Township, Three Lakes Township, and Paxton Township. It's approximately around 15,000 acres. We'll do introductions. I'm John Schuler. I'm a viewer. I actually farm right here. So I'm very acquainted with this part of the system. As we go east, you guys are the experts. Kevin Vickerman.
I farm down in Murray County.
And Luke Olson. He works for the Lyon County Soil and Water. He's also a viewer for us. And Blake Garberick, he farms by Lake Lillian. He's a viewer that helps us on these projects as well. So we'll go through the process. What do we do? How do we come up with the numbers? Why do we have the numbers the way they are? What percentage of the ditch is yours? And usually on meetings like this, we'll have questions about, there's a private ditch right there. How's that assessed and how do we pay for that? It's not the only one in this system. There's one right here, same thing. Some people tile in, some people tile out. We don't care if you do, but we need to know it. So if you're tiled out of the system, you wouldn't owe quite as much to this one because your underground drainage is going somewhere else. So you should pay to that system. So that's kind of why we have the meetings here. So the first thing we do when we're ordered to do a redetermination is that we have to take an oath. And what that means is the state has to, or the county, has to hire 3 disinterested people on this system. So none of us can have property in here. We can't have a son, a daughter that's in here that would have, maybe some financial interest with ours. So we're 3 disinterested people. We view each 40. So we go out and we look at each. If you have a half section, we actually go look at every 40. And what we do is we use pictometry. That's what this is. And that's got each 40 drawn out. It's got your parcel number. This one's actually LiDAR. This shows us the height. So this would be high ground here. And then as it gets to a lighter color, this would be a lower ground. This would be an old slough. Shows up pretty well on this, if you can find the pictometry. Okay, this is pictometry. So here we've got the soil types. 163A, that's an old slough. That held water. Around it's usually an 86. Yep, there's an 86. That's what we call a B acre. This would be an A acre. And around it would be a B acre. A acre never was farmed prior to drainage.
Held water.
It was, held water. It was a slough. The B soils around it, you could at least hay or pasture. So there was some value to that prior to drainage. The C, as you go up the hill, is the side hill is your C acres. So in wet conditions, they're a little peaked on yield, but you still get a crop. And then the D acres is the top of the hill. Really doesn't need drainage. You always get a crop regardless of how much rain you get. We also, if you in your packet you saw in the back our income and expense sheet. Now we use 210 bushel corn, 65 bushel beans, $4 a bushel and $9 a bushel. Don't get so hung up on these numbers. What happens, we go through what would the benefit of tile be to these acres. And that's how we come up with an A, B, C, D value. In this particular case, our A value is $3,254. And why do you care about this? Well, if you can, if you want to jump over, bring it back a little bit. Okay. So when we do your A, B, C, D values, we put in how many acres of A, B, C, and D, then that number comes over to your potential benefit. This one over, there you go. So here's your potential benefit. So this particular 40 is $69,160. Then we use a proximity rate. How close are you to the ditch or to the county tile? If it's on that 40, you're at 100%. If you're 85%, that means you're 140 over. We're giving you a little bit of reduction there, so you got some money to get to that ditch. If you're another 40 over, it's 70, another one's 60, another one's 50. I think the furthest back we go is like 25%, but on this system, you're all closer than that. Then we use the hydrology. How efficient is the system that's there? Now, if you got an open ditch with a 1-inch drainage coefficient per day, we consider that 100%. If you have a tile line that's a 1/2-inch coefficient a day, we consider that 100%. In this case, this individual is 140 over, so 85, but the hydrology is only 46%. So he's running, what would that be? Less than a 1/4 inch a day. So his potential benefit went from 1754 to 686. Okay? Now back on these numbers, all this is going to tell you really is what percentage of the system do you owe? Okay? This individual is 0.002%. So whatever the county levies, if they use this number, this guy would owe 15 bucks. Okay? It's a farm site, I'm guessing it's only 6 acres. So we can change these numbers. It really doesn't matter much whether you have 240 bushel corn, 200 bushel corn, 70 bushel beans, 50 bushel beans. These numbers will change a little bit, but your percentage will change hardly nothing. And that's really what you're concerned about, is what percentage of the system do I own? We plugged in 637,000 there. It's 2.25% of what the net benefit of this system is. I was looking, I believe our ditch assessment or payment for the buffers is like 400 and some thousand. So I don't know if the county, it's up to the ditch authority, the ditch inspector, if there needs to be a big repair or something on here. Otherwise, I don't know why they would need to levy 600,000 where 477 would buy the buffers. And if they would do that, take 400,000 times whatever your percentage of the system, that would be what you owe. I wouldn't get too hung up on that final spreadsheet because I have no idea what they'll assess. That's just numbers we put in there. What am I forgetting, Kevin?
So just to speak to that real quick so you folks know, we will assess only what's required to cover the cost of this redetermination. So if that actually comes in around 400 or whatever, that's what the assessment will be, not the 600 that's done actually.
Yeah, our bill typically is price of roundup.
$3 or $4 an acre.
Yeah, and then we did a hydrology through Bolton and Mink. I think at the time they were around $1 an acre. So our part of the assessment's probably $5, $6 an acre at the most. It's the buffer. This is the big one, $477,890. We use $7,000 an acre to buy that one rod. Whether you think that's too high or too low, that seems to be a fairly fair price. Land's going for $13,000, but I don't think a buffer strip buffer is worth $13. Is it worth less? I don't know. sales indicate that's what the land is worth, so that's the number we used. Okay, so if I have a county ditch, let's see, my percent, right? If you want to put up that map again. There was a question on what if there's a private ditch there? If you can find that one. Section 11. Okay. This is a private ditch. And I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing there's a whole lot of private tile in here. I know this system has a lot of pattern tiling in. We don't care about your private tile or your private ditch. That's between you and the neighbors or whoever built that. Now, I have a friend on the other side of the system. He rents a farm that the person that owns the farm, her husband and the neighbor put the private ditch in back in the 1960s. Well, them guys are gone. They had no written agreement, and now the neighbors are fighting. That ditch needs to be cleaned out. Well, I'm not going to help pay for it. It's not my ditch. Well, it was when it was built, but there was no written agreement. So if he wants that cleaned out, it's his dime. He can't force the other guy to do it. So yeah, if this is private and it needs to be cleaned, that's your dime. If this is a county tile, if that needs to be repaired, the whole system, all 15,000 acres is going to help pay for that. Okay? If there's a repair that has to be done on the other end, you're going to help pay for that. That's how it works.
That's the system.
That's how the system works.
And this one in particular, since the county tile does run through those 40s, the proximity would be based off the county tile and not the open ditch up here. So you'll notice on your proposed assessment, the proximities are probably 100% and 85 to the west. So that's why that's not off the private ditch, that's off of the county tile. Proximities are the same for the county tile versus open ditch, so.
Does that make sense? So, you know, one of the reasons we do redeterminations, back when this was built, which was around 1923, they did a determination of the benefits back then, and they only used the A and B acres. At that time, back in 1923, there were 7,688 acres, and the cost, the original benefits were $175,000. It cost $120,000 to build the system. $120,000 to put that whole system in. Today, we take all the acres. They just did the A and B. Now we do A, B, C, D, because that C and D acre are putting water into them tiles in that ditch. And we're pattern tiling right to the top of the hill. So all the acres are getting benefited. So, so now we've got a benefit of 28 million. At 120,000 or 100, whatever I said there, 175,000, you couldn't do much clean out for that anymore, could you?
50%.
50% of that, you could do about 150,000? 75,000? That's why they order a redetermination. Plus, you know, now the buffer law's in, so they're going to get that one rod paid for. Instead of being forced to do it, at least you're getting some cash for it now. I went through this pretty quick. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, or if you have any questions on how this works.
County Ditch 106 and County Ditch Redwood 106 and Redwood County Ditch 106 lateral A both outlet into the County Ditch 64, so those systems will be assessed outlet fees as part of this redetermination too. So their water is coming into County Ditch 64, and those two systems will be sent every time there's work or an amount levied, a portion of that amount levied will go to that ditch account to pay for their impacts to County Ditch 64. And we came up with the outlet fees for those. So those, though, anybody whose water is contributing to 64 will ultimately be paying
For clean out or.
a fair portion. That's our job to come up with
Okay.
what's the fair portion. So that's where we're at.
And if you own a quarter and a state highway's on one side, we'll take 3 acres off that you're not getting charged a benefit for. If the county road's on the bottom, that's 2 more acres we'd take off. If, per 40, by the way, per 40. And if the township's on the other side, it'd be 1 acre per 40. So if you have a road around your farm, you're not getting assessed for the road. The roads get assessed separate. So if you're a county or township or state, they're on here for their share of the assessment. If you have a wetland, we're not going to assess you for that. I don't think in this system there's too many wetlands. I think there's Barnum Slough that the DNR owns. I don't know if there was any other land.
Some crap.
It's interesting that Three Lakes Township doesn't have a lake, but when we were out there, we could see where they were. Yeah, you still have some of those edges of the lake that's still there.
You can really pick them out.
So we're far from going into this blind either. I mean, with the technology available now with LiDAR elevation information, the soils, the pictometry flights that are 6-inch definition, we're going in to review these and reassess, do the redeterminations with a lot of useful information in our back pocket. So we're kind of cheating we're cheating compared to what the old viewers had to work with, but definitely makes it more efficient and more defensible on our end to come up with division of benefits. And when you step back and think about it, it's hard to put a number on what the ditch is providing as far as how wet it was. This landscape was very wet. I mean, lakes, shallow lakes, and even more than shallow, probably 6 to 8 foot deep lakes are completely drained by the open ditch now. So it was wet, and coming up with that divide is the difficult part, but we're pretty confident when we
Yeah,
go out the field.
when we go out, we use these field sheets here. It's got your 40 and how many soil types are on there and how many acres in each soil type. The old viewers went out there and they went, okay, there was a 163 soil. How many dots are in there? And they would sit there and physically count how many dots to figure out how many acres of wet and B and C and D soil. So like Luke says, whether we're cheating or whether it's much more convenient,
Just like the old.
And much more accurate.
Marker that you had to measure out.
Yeah,
Now
I
you go to
mean-
the computer, you pop the line, and it tells you what it is.
With the mapping software, it just, I mean, it spits out the soil type in the 40 acres and how many acres in that particular soil type. It'll give us that in 30 seconds for the whole watershed. So
early on we had issues with square map and round world. So sometimes your boundaries don't quite line up. So we go off Beacon, the county has Beacon. You can go on that website if you'd like. And it shows your deeded acres, shows your property taxes, shows your whole life on there, right, Scott? Shows everything. So we go off, we have in tract, which is your deeded acres. That should be to the 100th of an acre. Should be fairly accurate. And then we have the benefited acres again. So minus roads or any wetlands or waterways. Any questions? If you have any question about your personal property, we typically, when we're done with this part of it, we'll break out separate. You can talk to any one of us or all of us. The whole world don't need to know your specific question unless it pertains to everybody, But some might say, hey, my neighbor tiled out, he tiled in. We get a lot of that. That's okay. I tiled in or tiled out. That's okay. We're not trying to get anybody. We're just trying to make it fair and equal as much as we can for the whole system.
I don't understand the term tiled in, tiled out.
Well, here's your, well, especially here in Redwood County, Renville County, there might be a foot between the watersheds. Where are you going to draw that line? Where's the watershed? So if I have this farm and I got a tile here, but there's a ditch, I might want to just tile this right to the ditch privately.
Instead of going through.
Okay, so I just tiled out of the system to get here, to this ditch, because I'm gonna have better drainage.
Oh,
Okay, that's okay. What we'd do is say, okay, your subsurface drainage should go to this system, but your overland drainage is gonna stay in here, and we'd give you a reduced rate for this system then. And vice versa, it might be the other way. You go, well,
Tile
it makes sense for me to go in, and so then you'd be tiling in, and then you should be assessed in this system for your underground drainage. And,
On how deep you have to go through to get to that ditch.
yeah,
Right, and some of the, particularly in this watershed, some of the watershed breaks are quite subtle, maybe a foot or two. Other locations, they're 10, 15, 20 feet to break through. So, I mean, you're dealing with hills in some spots and lesser hills in others to break the watershed. Granted, this is pretty well drained completely around the watershed boundary is kind of predicated also on another system abutting this one. So, I mean, in the same section, there might be 2, if not 3 different drainage systems, all public, so.
Do you have to get permission then to do that tile in, tile out, or?
well,
Yes.
Yes, you-
yes.
So the short answer is yes. So just to clarify, it is illegal to break watershed lines with your drainage.
Okay.
But as John said, no, and I'd be the one talking, all right? So no one here is trying to get you today. And one of the reasons it's illegal is that if you break that watershed line, well, all of a sudden you're draining into another ditch, but you're not helping to pay for any maintenance that those folks are having to pay for to keep that drainage going. So there is a process through ditch law that outside of this redetermination, if you wanted to drain out of the watershed, there's a separate petition process that you could submit to the county to drain those additional acreages and kind of move that watershed boundary. But then there's additional cost to you because we got to hire the viewers to go out and figure out how much benefits should you be paying into that other system. Then you got to pay an outlet fee, kind of permission to get into it. So there's a legal way to do it. But what they're kind of offering here today and what we do during redeterminations, like I said, we're not trying to get anybody. If you have tiled out, there's always a chance, it's underground, but there's always a chance somebody rats you out. Under state law, if someone's tiled out and they don't want to go through that proceeding to get into the other system, we actually have an obligation to cut that drainage because you're not paying into that. We don't want to do that. We haven't done it, and that's never going to be a goal. But this is an opportunity, whether you're in or out, just to make sure the books are correct, and you don't need to do it through another procedure.
Yeah. Typically what we find is I farmed that 40 or that quarter, and I got my neighbor took it away, and I know he tiled out of there. That's usually what we find.
But we also have changed our boundary also. If there's a hole, like a hole 40 that was out, we could change that boundary and add that in at this time.
This obviously is 2 different systems, because here's your watershed and you've got tile running both ways. So somewhere in there's a watershed break. Luke's pretty good at figuring that out. He can zoom right in to that half a foot or foot.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation.
Well, I hope it helped. If your neighbors ask, just kind of, either they can call me or you can explain it to them now. You're an expert because you listened to us.
I know you gotta obey all the laws and ditches.
Yeah.
Again, both me and John do farm, so we're accustomed to how it works, how water works. How we would like to have it done on our farm was what we would do here.
We just did a system in Lyon County, and it's coming right off the Buffalo Ridge. So their water just flushes down to the low guys, and I'm familiar with this ground. That still is foreign to me, how how that all works. It just jumps watersheds because there's so much water coming. But
Get a 10-inch rain, you know,
well, it's easy for us to go out after a 10-inch rain because we know just where that water used to stand and how much of it used to stand there. So my grandpa talks about how he shot prairie chickens in the slough behind the grove. You know, and that ditch went in 1918. No more prairie chickens.
and it was dug in by hand too that time.
Yeah, I think they floated a dredge, they said,
Well, yeah.
which I don't know how you
That's
could.
close to hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the bull ditches, you know. Didn't know why they called them bull ditches until we started doing this. So,
Basically, all the ditches were deepened.
with
creeks.
bulls. Pulled a plow behind bulls.
Just deepened creeks.
Bull ditch. So,
So just so you guys know the next steps here, next Tuesday is the county board meeting. That's going to be the public hearing on this redetermination. If you have any changes you want to make, today's the time to let these guys know, because once we get to that public hearing, it's kind of too late to be adjusting the sheets. If the board adopts this on next Tuesday, that's both the redetermination and the consolidation of 64 and the several laterals that are out there. There's a 30-day appeal period. That being that if you don't like the numbers that you've been given and we've all said, nope, that's what it's going to be, and you disagree, you have by statute 30 days to file an appeal. So you go get an attorney right away, because that's the smart thing to do. You file your appeal. If you wait beyond those 30 days, you are out of luck, because by statute that is now set in stone and you've kind of slept on your rights. So you need to, if you disagree, file that appeal right away. Once that 30 days is up, we're looking at April 15th. After that, the auditor from Redwood County will be sending out a bill along with any checks, if you're going to get a check. That would probably be late April, early May, just kind of depending on the auditor's schedule and what other things they have going on in the office as far as workload. Traditionally, what we've done as a county, and it's up to the drainage authority, which is the county board to decide, you either have 60 days to pay your bill up front from when you receive that letter, or you can choose to put it on your property taxes. Traditionally, we've done it for 3 years at 4% interest. So if you choose to do that, I believe all you have to do is take no action in making payment, and the auditor will automatically apply that to your taxes. I suggest you reach out if that's your plan. You will also, if you are getting a check for your buffer strip, you will be receiving a 1099, I believe.
1099, yeah.
And you will need to fill that out and get it back to the auditor, because she won't cut you a check until she has that form in hand. Yeah.
Would there be a different amount paid if you pay directly or through your taxes? Is there any?
If you pay directly, you pay what's on your bill. If you pay through your taxes, it'll be 4% interest.
That'll be 4%.
Tacked on. Then you can pay it off early with no penalty.
Yeah.
So if you choose to do that next year, you want to come in and pay it, there's no penalty to pay it off.
Yeah, for anybody with a good point, Scott, anybody with an open ditch on their property, you do get the 1099 sale, so that's a check. And your tax man's going to say, what's this for? What'd you sell? Then you're going to get a bill because you owe something on that system. So now you got a check and a bill. It'd be nice to have it in the same year. When I did mine, I had the check, so I had to pay taxes. Then I got a bill, and he goes, what's this bill on your big bill on your property taxes? So it might be a good idea to talk to your accountant to see how you handle that, and then talk to the auditor how they're going to handle it.
I think they can do an average of a couple of years if it's, knows it's coming.
It'd be nice to have it the same year. I don't know if that'll work in this case, but it'd work better for you.
We do send the checks, as long as you get your 1099 back in a timely manner. We always try to make sure that you get your check before your bill is due, because a lot of people like to take that check to help pay that bill. So it'd be within that same 60 days as long as you get that 1099 turned around.
Okay, any other questions?
Will they issue a check if you have both sides of the ditch, like in the CRP, turned into a RIM program?
Yes. Because they're buying that one rod.
no matter what.
Yeah,
At 7,000 an acre.
yeah. You'll lose your payment, if CREP maybe, I don't know what CREP, but if it's CRP, you'd lose your CRP payment on that, them acreage.
When it's time to re-enroll it.
Which,
Yeah,
if you put it in, I thought if you put it in beforehand,
yeah,
Well,
I don't
it's,
know.
then you're grandfathered in. If you
You're-
did it later,
yeah, you're under
then you're not
contract.
allowed that 1 acre, or that one rod.
They won't reduce it.
They're gonna, it goes to, okay,
mine has been in 12 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they'll still buy that acre, you'll get the cash for that.
well, that's a good Scott question, because I know my buffer, they said we're not paying you for that anymore, because it's gotta be in.
Yep.
So we
Yes,
reduced that,
Since 2017, was it November of 17? I think is when the Dayton buffer law came into effect. that
Yep.
You had to have a buffer. Since that, no state or federal program will pay you for that buffer strip. Right or wrong, but now it's your legal obligation, so they won't pay you to put it into grass because you're obligated to. So if you go into CRP after 2017 on that buffer strip, you can still do it, but they'll take that 16.5 feet. They won't pay you for that. They'll just pay you for what's beyond that.
Outside.
yeah.
But you should get your rest of your contract.
Yeah, I got 3 or 4 years left.
But your buffer payment from the redetermination is as if there's no buffer out there. So you're getting that $7,000 per acre, irregardless of the buffer lot, irregardless of any program you're in. You'll get that grass strip payment.
Good question.
It's been a long time since we viewed this, I don't know how much, most of the buffers all been put in. Half of them were in, I think, when we viewed it.
64 is pretty well on, there's a couple spots.
Any more questions? All right, thank you everyone for coming today. If you have any questions privately after the meeting, we'll stick around, so thank you for coming.